The crowd at JFK International Terminal gasps as Imani Davis, a renowned civil rights attorney, stands atop the airline check-in desk, her designer heels crushing boarding passes, her voice amplified through the hijacked PA system. Delta Horizon. Airlines denied my 9-year-old daughter's basic human dignity while their white passengers walked freely to bathrooms. 10 minutes from now, this airline stops operating permanently. Security rushes forward but freezes when CNN cameras appear. Nobody realizes this confrontation began just hours earlier, with 2 little girls simply needing to use the restroom. What would drive a respected attorney to risk everything for a bathroom break? Before I begin this shocking story, tell me where you're watching from. If you believe in justice and equal treatment for everyone, hit that like and subscribe button to stay updated with more powerful stories that expose the truth. 9-year-old twins Zara and Zuri Davis were not ordinary children by any standard. With matching cornrow braids adorned with colorful beads that clicked together when they whispered their brilliant ideas to each other, the girls had already skipped 2 grades and were headed to San Francisco for the National Junior Science Olympiad. Their mother, 38-year-old Imani Davis, watched them with a mixture of pride and anxiety as they boarded Delta Horizon Airlines, Flight 2467 from Atlanta. This trip marked their first major journey since their father's death, 6 months earlier during a routine traffic stop that escalated when officers mistook his insulin pen for a weapon. As a Harvard-educated civil rights attorney specializing in discrimination cases, Imani had fought for others in courtrooms across America, but nothing had prepared her for fighting for justice for her own husband or protecting her daughters, in a world that often seemed determined to diminish their humanity. The first leg of their journey had gone smoothly. The girls quietly read their advanced physics books while sharing occasional bursts of giggles that made other passengers smile. Imani had chosen the connecting flight through JFK International Airport because it offered the girls a brief adventure in New York before continuing to their competition. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom 3 hours into the flight, announcing they were beginning their descent into JFK but warning of unusual turbulence. What should have been a 20-minute landing procedure stretched past 40 minutes as the plane circled repeatedly through rough air pockets that jostled passengers and frayed nerves. Zuri gripped her mother's hand tightly, while Zara, always the more analytical twin, whispered facts about aviation weather patterns to calm herself. "Mom?" Zuri whispered urgently after nearly an hour of extended landing patterns, her voice tinged with embarrassment and growing panic. "I really need to use the bathroom." Beside her, Zara nodded vigorously, her face showing similar distress. Imani pressed the flight attendant call button, and within moments, a flight attendant with a silver name tag reading Brenda Whitmore approached with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "My daughters need to use the restroom urgently," Imani explained quietly. "The extended landing has been difficult for them." Brenda's smile tightened as she glanced at the twins. "I'm sorry, but the seatbelt sign is on. FAA regulations prohibit any movement during landing procedures. They'll need to wait until we're at the gate." She turned away before Imani could respond, moving quickly down the aisle. 5 minutes later, Imani noticed a young white boy approximately the same age as her daughters being escorted to the bathroom by the same flight attendant. When the boy returned to his seat, his mother gave him a reassuring pat on the shoulder, while casting a smug glance toward the Davis family. Imani pressed the call button again. This time, Brenda's approach was noticeably cooler. "As I explained, FAA regulations prohibit bathroom use during landing. Your children will need to wait." "But you just allowed that young boy to use the restroom," Imani pointed out, keeping her voice level despite her rising anger. "My daughters have been waiting nearly 20 minutes longer." "That was a medical exception," Brenda replied with a dismissive wave. "Unless your children have documented medical conditions, they need to remain seated." Imani felt her attorney instincts activating. "Medical exception? You didn't ask for documentation. My daughters have been requesting access for over 20 minutes. This is clearly discriminatory treatment." Brenda's face hardened. "Are you accusing me of something, ma'am? Because I can assure you this airline follows all federal regulations without discrimination. If you continue to be disruptive, I'll need to alert the captain." Discreetly, Imani slipped her phone from her purse and began recording the interaction, while the twins squirmed uncomfortably in their seats. Zuri was now openly crying, while Zara tried desperately to comfort her sister despite her own discomfort. "I just want equal treatment for my children," Imani stated clearly for the recording. "They are experiencing genuine distress." "Mom," Zuri sobbed quietly, burying her face into her mother's shoulder. "I can't hold it anymore." A dark stain spread across her jeans as she cried silently, her small body shaking with humiliation. Nearby passengers began to notice, some turning away in embarrassment while others whispered behind raised hands. One woman loudly remarked to her husband, "Some people just don't teach their children proper control," as if the family couldn't hear her. When the plane finally reached the gate 20 minutes later, Brenda's announcement came over the intercom. "We've arrived at JFK International. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign is turned off." As passengers began collecting their belongings, the flight attendant made one final announcement. "We need to allow our passengers in rows 1 through 15 to depart first today due to a connection issue." The Davis family was seated in row 23. As white passengers filed past them, several made audible comments about the smell and lack of hygiene, while giving the family wide berth. One businessman in an expensive suit loudly asked if he could be reseated on his next flight, away from certain passengers. Zuri sobbed silently into her mother's shoulder, while Zara sat rigid with anger and humiliation, her small fists clenched in her lap, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, "They're treating us like we're not even people, Mom, just like they did to Dad." The Davis family finally exited the aircraft after nearly every other passenger had departed, Imani carrying Zuri's small backpack, while the embarrassed child attempted to hide the visible stain on her clothes. Zara walked beside her sister with protective fierceness, glaring at anyone who dared to stare at them. What should have been an exciting stopover in New York had transformed into a nightmare of humiliation and bias that was only beginning to unfold. Do you think what happened on that airplane was an isolated incident or part of a systemic problem? Comment number 1 if you believe this was deliberate discrimination. Comment number 2 if you think it might have been a misunderstanding. And subscribe to see how this injustice escalates to unimaginable levels. Excuse me. Imani approached the first customer service desk she spotted in the terminal, her attorney demeanor firmly in place despite her internal fury. "I need to speak with a manager immediately about discriminatory treatment my family just experienced on our flight." The customer service representative barely glanced up from his computer screen. "Take a number, please. Current wait time for customer concerns is approximately 45 minutes. My 9-year-old daughter had an accident because your flight attendant denied her bathroom access while allowing white children the same privilege," Imani stated loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. "I need a manager now, and my daughter needs access to facilities to clean up and change." This finally caught the representative's attention. He picked up a phone, speaking in hushed tones before hanging up. "Manager Todd Keller will be with you shortly. Please step aside so I can assist other customers." Todd Keller arrived 15 minutes later, a tall man with a perpetual frown and corporate name badge displayed prominently on his pressed suit. His eyes flicked dismissively over the family before settling on Imani. "I understand there's been some concern about our in-flight procedures. Perhaps we could discuss this privately?" "My daughters need access to a bathroom first," Imani insisted. "They've been traumatized enough." Todd's frown deepened. "Of course, but I should inform you that our customer bathrooms are currently being serviced. The nearest facilities are past security in the main terminal. So you're telling me my daughter, who has already been humiliated on your flight, has to walk through this entire terminal in soiled clothing because your staff discriminated against her?" Imani's voice rose slightly, drawing attention from passing travelers. "Ma'am, I'd appreciate if you'd lower your voice," Todd replied with obvious irritation. "No one discriminated against your child. Air travel requires certain adjustments, and sometimes kids just need to learn to hold it better." Imani felt a surge of rage, but maintained her professional composure. "My children were denied a basic human necessity while their white counterparts were granted access. I've documented the incident and am prepared to file formal complaints with the FAA, Department of Transportation, and a civil rights lawsuit unless this is addressed immediately." Todd's demeanor shifted from dismissive to hostile. "Are you threatening our airline? because I should warn you that making unfounded accusations of discrimination is slander, and Delta Horizon has a zero-tolerance policy for passengers who create disturbances." As he spoke, 2 security officers began moving toward them, clearly summoned by someone at the customer service desk. Meanwhile, a white couple at a neighboring service desk was loudly complaining about their seating assignment, with the man pounding his fist on the counter and threatening to call corporate. No security approached them despite their obvious aggression. The contrast was striking and further fueled Imani's determination. "Girls, stay close," Imani instructed as the security officers approached. The lead officer, a broad-shouldered white man with Blackwood on his badge, positioned himself directly in the family's path. "Is there a problem here?" Officer Blackwood asked, directing his question to Todd rather than Imani. "This passenger is being disruptive and making accusations against our staff," Todd replied. "We may need to escort her from the terminal. I am attempting to access bathroom facilities for my daughter who was denied access during our flight," Imani stated, firmly, her phone now recording openly. "I believe this constitutes a violation of 14 CFR Part 382, which prohibits discriminatory treatment by air carriers, as well as potential violations of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act." Officer Blackwood's expression hardened. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to put away your phone and lower your voice. Airport security requirements under TSA Regulation Title 49. "I'm fully aware of TSA regulations, Officer Blackwood," Imani interrupted, her Harvard law training evident in her precise citation of legal codes. "As I was informing Mr. Keller, I'm documenting what appears to be a pattern of discriminatory treatment. Now, unless you intend to physically prevent a 9-year-old child from accessing public restroom facilities, I suggest you radio for a female officer to escort us." The twins had retreated to a corner near a charging station, Zuri trying to hide behind her sister, while both girls wiped away silent tears. Their distress caught the attention of passing travelers, including a flight attendant from another airline who approached the scene with concern. "Is everything okay here?" the woman asked, her uniform identifying her as an employee of United Airways. "No, it isn't," Imani replied, grateful for the intervention. "My daughters were denied bathroom access on their flight while white children were permitted to go, resulting in an accident. Now we're being blocked from accessing terminal facilities to clean up." The United employee's expression shifted from concern to outrage. "That's unacceptable. Follow me, please. We have employee facilities closer than the main terminal restrooms." She turned to Officer Blackwood with a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'll take responsibility for these passengers, thank you." As they began to follow the United employee, Officer Blackwood stepped directly into their path. "Ma'am, these passengers need to remain here until we've completed our security assessment." "My daughters need a bathroom," Imani stated firmly. "Unless you're placing us under arrest, which would require probable cause of criminal activity, we are proceeding to the restroom with this employee's assistance." A small crowd had gathered, several passengers openly filming the confrontation on their phones. Officer Blackwood seemed to register the growing audience and reluctantly stepped aside, but not before speaking into his radio with a code that Imani couldn't quite hear. From the corner of her eye, she noticed a well-dressed businessman watching the scene with unusual intensity before speaking quietly into his phone. The United employee led them to a staff bathroom where Zuri could clean up and change into spare clothes from their carry-on. As Imani helped her daughter, the United employee whispered, "This happens more than you'd think. I'm so sorry." When they emerged 15 minutes later, feeling momentarily relieved, they were greeted by 3 security officers, including Blackwood, who now held their carry-on bags. "We need to conduct a security inspection of your belongings," he announced, his tone suggesting this was non-negotiable. "Please follow me to the screening area." "Our bags were already screened before our flight from Atlanta," Imani protested. "What is the basis for this additional screening?" "Random selection, ma'am," Blackwood replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Airport security protocols. I'm sure you understand. Would you stand by silently if you witness this happening to a family at an airport? Hit like if you'd speak up against this injustice, subscribe if you believe everyone deserves equal treatment regardless of race, and leave a comment sharing what you would do in this situation. Now, what will happen when security gets there? Hands on the evidence Imani has collected? The confrontation is about to reach a shocking new level. What began as a simple bathroom request had now escalated into a full security situation. Officer Blackwood led the Davis family to a separate screening area, away from the main security checkpoints, where 2 additional TSA agents waited with blue gloves already donned. Imani noticed that while dozens of travelers passed through regular screening, their family appeared to be the only ones selected for this random enhanced security check. Through the glass partition, she watched as white families sailed through expedited security lanes without a second glance, some even carrying water bottles and other liquids that typically warranted inspection. "Please place all electronic devices in these bins," instructed a female agent whose name tag read Morales. Her expression remained professionally neutral as she added, "This is just a routine secondary screening." "May I ask what flagged us for secondary screening?" Imani questioned, reluctantly placing her phone in the bin. That phone contained the video evidence of discrimination on the airplane, and she felt increasingly uneasy about surrendering it. "Random selection algorithm, ma'am," Agent Morales replied without making eye contact. "Nothing personal." Officer Blackwood interrupted. "We'll need to conduct separate screenings for security purposes. Your daughters will be screened in the adjacent room." "Absolutely not," Imani stated firmly. "My daughters are minors, and I do not consent to their separation from me. Under TSA regulations, children under 13 should remain with their parents during any screening procedure." "Ma'am, I need to remind you that airport security is a federal matter, and non-compliance can result in serious consequences," Blackwood countered, his hand moving subtly toward his radio. Zara, despite her young age, stepped forward and declared, with remarkable composure, "We know our rights. My mom is a lawyer, and she says you can't separate us." Her voice trembled slightly, but her expression remained determined as she gripped her sister's hand. A supervisor appeared, drawn by the escalating tension. His badge identified him as Gary Preston, TSA Supervisory Officer. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his gaze moving between Imani and Blackwood. "These passengers have been flagged for enhanced screening due to behavioral markers," Blackwood explained before Imani could speak. "They've been uncooperative with airline staff and security personnel. My family has been subjected to discriminatory treatment since boarding our connection in Atlanta," Imani countered. "My daughters were denied bathroom access that was granted to white children, resulting in an accident and public humiliation. Now we're being targeted for random screening that appears anything but random." Preston's expression remained impassive. "I understand your frustration, ma'am, but security protocols are non-negotiable. We've received reports of disruptive behavior, which requires additional screening measures." "What specific behavioral markers justified this screening?" Imani demanded. "I'd like that documented for the record." "That information is classified under transportation security directives," Preston replied smoothly. "Now we can conduct this screening professionally and quickly, or we can escalate to a private room screening, which will significantly delay your connecting flight. Your choice." The twins had moved closer to their mother, their earlier confidence fading as they sensed the growing hostility. Zuri whispered, "Mom, I'm scared," loud enough for the agents to hear. "It's standard procedure to do a quick pat-down for passengers in enhanced screening," Agent Morales explained, approaching the twins. "It only takes a moment." "You do not have my consent to touch my children," Imani stated firmly, stepping between the agent and her daughters. "I am formally objecting to this screening as discriminatory and requesting alternative security measures as provided under TSA Directive 1544-1914. Preston's eyebrows raised slightly at her specific knowledge of TSA procedures. "Restrain her," he ordered suddenly, and before Imani could react, 2 officers gripped her arms while Agent Morales began to pat down the twins despite their frightened protests. "You have no legal right to restrain me or touch my children without consent," Imani shouted, struggling against the officer's grip. "This is assault in violation of TSA's own published procedures regarding child screening protocols." Tears streamed down the twins' faces as they underwent the humiliating pat-down. their mother restrained just feet away. Zuri had begun to hyperventilate, triggering concerns of a panic attack. Nearby passengers had stopped to stare, some filming discreetly on their phones. Section 3.1 of the TSA Screening Management Standard Operating Procedure clearly states that pat-downs of children should be conducted by officers of the same gender with a parent present and not under restraint, Imani recited, her legal training evident in her precise citation. You are violating your own procedures and exposing this agency to significant liability. Her words seemed to register with some of the junior officers, who exchanged uncertain glances. One whispered something to Preston, who finally signaled the officers to release Imani. We're following modified procedures based on the security alert level, Preston claimed, though his confidence had visibly diminished. I want the specific regulatory justification documented now, along with all of your badge numbers and the surveillance footage preserved, Imani demanded, immediately moving to comfort her daughters. I'm formally notifying you of pending legal action for violation of our civil rights. The junior officers grew increasingly uncomfortable, one eventually pulling Preston aside for a whispered conversation. After a tense exchange, Preston's demeanor shifted noticeably. It appears there may have been a misunderstanding regarding the screening protocol, he conceded reluctantly. We'll complete the baggage inspection and return your belongings promptly. Within minutes, their carry-ons and electronic devices were returned, though Imani immediately checked her phone to confirm the video evidence remained intact. To her relief, the footage was still there, and she quickly backed it up to cloud storage before the phone could be confiscated again. You're cleared to proceed to your gate, Preston announced flatly. Delta Horizon Flight 8421 to San Francisco, departing from Gate C-17. The family hurried away from the security area, the twins still shaken by the ordeal. Are we safe now, Mom? Zara asked, her usual confidence subdued. We're going to be fine, Imani assured them, though uncertainty gnawed at her. The confrontation had delayed them considerably, and their connecting flight was scheduled to depart in just 30 minutes. When they finally reached Gate C-17, breathless from rushing through the terminal, they found the gate area empty except for a single Delta Horizon agent who was already shutting down the computer terminal. Excuse me, Imani called out. We're here for Flight 8421 to San Francisco. The gate agent looked up with a frown. I'm sorry. That flight has already completed boarding. The doors are closed. That's impossible, Imani protested, checking her watch. Boarding shouldn't end for another 15 minutes according to our boarding passes. The agent consulted her computer with obvious reluctance. It appears your reservation was canceled approximately 20 minutes ago due to a system flag. I'm showing a security exception code. A security exception? We were just cleared by TSA, Imani explained, frustration mounting. This is clearly retaliation for the complaint I raised about discriminatory treatment. I can't speak to that. Ma'am, the agent replied flatly. The system shows your reservation was canceled. You'll need to visit customer service for rebooking options. As they turned to leave, Imani noticed their flight visible through the window, still parked at the gate with the boarding bridge still attached. The boarding sign remained illuminated over the gate. Their flight hadn't left at all. They had simply been prevented from boarding through deliberate misinformation. The customer service area of Delta Horizon Airlines was crowded with passengers seeking assistance for various travel issues, but the Davis family's situation would soon prove unlike any other. They took their place in line, the twins exhausted and traumatized by the series of hostile encounters they'd already endured. When they finally reached the front of the line after 40 minutes of waiting, they were directed to a service representative named Alice Miller, a woman with a tight blonde bun and eyes that didn't match her practiced smile. How can I assist you today? Alice asked, her fingers poised over her keyboard. We need to be rebooked on the next available flight to San Francisco, Imani explained, presenting their boarding passes and ID. Our reservation was incorrectly canceled due to a security flag that's already been cleared by TSA. Alice typed for several moments, her expression growing increasingly puzzled. I'm seeing a rather unusual notation on your reservation, she said finally. There's a system flag that's preventing me from rebooking you on any Delta Horizon flight today. What kind of flag? Imani pressed, her attorney instincts heightening. I'm not authorized to provide that information, Alice replied. It appears to be a security-related restriction. The system isn't allowing any override. Imani leaned forward slightly. Are there seats available on the next flight to San Francisco? Alice's fingers moved across her keyboard again. Yes, flight DH994 departs in 2 hours and currently shows 17 open seats in economy. Then please book us on that flight, Imani requested firmly. The security concern has been addressed and cleared by TSA Supervisor Preston. You can call him to confirm if necessary. I'm sorry, but the system won't allow it, Alice insisted. The flag requires management approval for any rebooking, and I don't have a manager available at the moment. Behind the Davis family, a white couple approached another service desk with a similar rebooking request. Imani overheard them explaining they had missed their connection to San Francisco and needed the next available flight. Within minutes, they were issued new boarding passes for flight DH994, the very same flight Alice had claimed required special approval. Meanwhile, Zuri had grown increasingly withdrawn, her eyes vacant as she leaned against her sister. As a child psychologist had explained after their father's death, Zuri sometimes dissociated when overwhelmed by stress or trauma, her mind's way of protecting itself from unbearable emotions. Zara held her sister's hand tightly, whispering reassurances even as her own eyes filled with tears of frustration and fear. My daughters have been traumatized repeatedly since boarding your airline, Imani stated, struggling to maintain her professional composure. They were denied bathroom access based on their race, subjected to public humiliation, targeted for random security screening, and now we're being denied rebooking without explanation. I need to speak with a manager immediately. As I mentioned, there are no managers currently available, Alice replied, her tone growing defensive. Perhaps you'd like to try another airline. I'm sure they'd be happy to sell you new tickets. Imani pulled out her phone and quickly dialed her colleague, Marcus Jenkins, a fellow civil rights attorney who specialized in transportation discrimination cases. Putting the call on speaker, she briefly explained the situation while Alice listened, with visible discomfort. I'm documenting a clear pattern of discriminatory treatment by Delta Horizon Airlines, Imani explained to Marcus. The airline denied my daughter's bathroom access that was provided to white children, resulting in an accident. We were then targeted for enhanced security screening. Our reservation was mysteriously canceled while we were detained, and now they're refusing to rebook us despite available seats. This is textbook discriminatory treatment under Title VI and DOT regulations, Marcus replied, his voice clear enough for Alice and nearby passengers to hear. I'm submitting an emergency complaint to the Department of Transportation right now. What's the name of the representative refusing service? Alice immediately pushed back from her computer. Please hold one moment while I contact my supervisor, she said hurriedly, picking up her phone. While they waited, Imani noticed a social media notification on her phone. A passenger from their original flight had posted a video of Zuri's distress after the bathroom incident, commenting on the apparent discrimination. The post was already gaining traction, with hundreds of comments expressing outrage at the airline's treatment of the young girls. After several minutes, a new representative approached. Her name badge identified her as Jennifer Simmons, Customer Service Manager. I understand there's been some confusion regarding your reservation, she began, with a practiced smile. I've reviewed the situation, and unfortunately, the earliest we can accommodate your party is on our flight departing the day after tomorrow. The day after tomorrow? Imani repeated incredulously. Your representative just confirmed there are 17 available seats on a flight departing in less than 2 hours. A white family was booked on that very flight while we stood here waiting. Those seats are reserved for premium status members and specific connection guarantees, Jennifer explained smoothly. Company policy. May I see that policy in writing? Imani requested, because selectively applying policies based on race violates federal transportation laws. Jennifer's smile tightened. I'm not at liberty to share internal policies. However, I can offer you accommodation vouchers for 2 nights at an airport hotel while we sort this out. My daughters are scheduled to participate in the National Junior Science Olympiad tomorrow in San Francisco, Imani explained, her frustration mounting. This rebooking delay would cause them to miss the competition entirely. I understand that's disappointing, Jennifer replied with rehearsed sympathy that lacked any genuine empathy. Perhaps they can participate next year. Imani had had enough. Pulling out her phone again, she opened Twitter and quickly composed. A post, Delta Horizon Airlines denied my black 9-yo twins bathroom access granted to white child, causing accident. Now refusing to rebook us despite empty seats given to white passengers. Delta Horizon discrimination, Shri flying while black. She attached the video she'd recorded on the plane and pressed send. I've just shared our experience with my 20,000 followers, Imani informed Jennifer calmly, many of whom are fellow civil rights attorneys and journalists. I suspect this will receive significant attention very quickly. Jennifer's expression darkened. Are you threatening our airline, Ms. Davis? I'm exercising my right to share a factual account of my experience, Imani corrected her. Now, would you like to reconsider our rebooking request before this escalates further? Jennifer stepped away briefly, speaking in hushed tones with another staff member. When she returned, her professional veneer had hardened into open hostility. I'll need to ask you to step away from the counter, Ms. Davis. You're creating a disturbance in our terminal. I'm calmly requesting service that you're providing to other customers, Imani replied, standing her ground. Jennifer nodded to someone behind them, and Imani turned to find 2 airport police officers approaching. These passengers are being disruptive and threatening our staff, Jennifer informed the officers before Imani could speak. We've asked them to leave the service area, but they're refusing. The 2 airport police officers approached the Davis family with stern expressions. Officer Ramirez, a heavy-set man with a closely trimmed mustache, and Officer Chen, a younger woman with her hand resting near her radio, positioned themselves on either side of Imani. The terminal's bustling activity seemed to slow around them as travelers sensed the brewing confrontation. Have you ever witnessed law enforcement being called on someone simply for standing up for their rights? Comment. Number 1, if you've seen this kind of intimidation tactic before. Number 2, if you're shocked that this still happens in America. Hit subscribe to follow this family's fight against a system that seems determined to break them down at every turn. Ma'am, we've received a complaint that you're creating a disturbance, Officer Ramirez stated flatly. We need you to step away from the counter and lower your voice. I haven't raised my voice once during this interaction, Imani replied calmly. I'm simply requesting the same service being provided to other customers. She noticed Zuri beginning to tremble beside her, eyes wide with fear as she stared at the officers' uniforms and badges. Since their father's death during a police encounter, the sight of law enforcement triggered intense anxiety for both girls. Daddy couldn't breathe, Zuri whispered, beginning to hyperventilate as flashbacks overtook her. They wouldn't listen to him either. Officer Chen's expression softened slightly at the child's obvious distress. What's wrong with her? She asked, more gently than her partner. My husband, their father, died during a police incident 6 months ago, Imani explained quietly. The uniform triggers their trauma. Please give us some space. Officer Ramirez seemed unmoved. We need to see identification and boarding passes immediately, he demanded, his hand shifting to rest on his equipment belt in a subtly threatening gesture. Before Imani could respond, Zara stepped forward, her 9-year-old frame tiny compared to the towering officers, but her voice surprisingly steady. My mom is a civil rights lawyer. She knows our rights. You're scaring my sister because of what police did to our dad. We haven't done anything wrong except be black in this airport. The raw truth from a child's mouth drew audible gasps from bystanders. A passenger nearby had begun filming the encounter, and others quickly followed suit, phones raised to capture the confrontation. Officer Chen touched her partner's arm, clearly uncomfortable with the growing audience and the optics of intimidating a family with young children. We just need to clear up a misunderstanding, Officer Chen said, attempting to defuse the situation. Airport regulations require that we investigate all reported disturbances. The only disturbance is the systematic discrimination my family has faced since boarding Delta Horizon, Imani stated clearly for the benefit of those recording. My daughters were denied bathroom access that was granted to white children. We were subjected to enhanced security screening without cause. Our reservation was canceled while we were detained, and now the airline refuses to rebook us despite available seats. Officer Ramirez cut her off. This isn't the place for complaints about airline service. We need to move this conversation to a private security office for further questioning. Are we being detained? Imani asked directly. Because unless you're placing us under arrest, we're free to remain in public areas of this terminal. We need to separate you from your children temporarily for standard questioning procedures, Ramirez continued, ignoring her question. It's protocol for situations involving public disturbances. Pure terror flashed across the twins' faces. No! Zuri screamed, clinging to her mother with such force that her small nails left marks. Don't let them take us. They took Daddy and he never came back. The raw emotion in the child's voice stopped conversations throughout the terminal. Passengers had formed a loose circle around the confrontation, many openly recording now. You will not separate me from my minor children, Imani stated with deadly calm, her attorney demeanor fully engaged. Under New York state law and TSA regulations, there is no standard procedure authorizing separation of parents from children, absent evidence of abuse or a court order. Any attempt to separate us constitutes unlawful detention and will result in immediate legal action against you personally and professionally. Her precise legal knowledge clearly caught Officer Ramirez off guard, but he doubled down. If you continue to obstruct our investigation, we'll have no choice but to place you under arrest for interfering with airport security operations. Officer Ramirez, Imani read from his badge. I want to be absolutely clear. I am documenting a threat of false arrest made to intimidate my family after we reported racial discrimination. That constitutes criminal civil rights violations under both state and federal law. As tension escalated, an unexpected voice called out from the growing crowd of onlookers. I saw everything that happened on that flight. A middle-aged woman in a teacher's convention lanyard stepped forward. They wouldn't let these little girls use the bathroom but let a white boy go right after. It was disgusting discrimination, plain and simple. Another passenger joined in. I saw the security screening too. They were the only black family pulled for random screening in the half hour I was waiting in line. The crowd grew more vocal, with several people shouting that they were live streaming the confrontation. A man in a business suit announced loudly that he was an attorney with the ACLU and was documenting clear Fourth Amendment violations. Officer Chen, now visibly uncomfortable, whispered something to her partner. The dynamics had shifted dramatically, with dozens of witnesses and multiple recordings capturing their every move. Ramirez finally took a step back. We're going to issue a warning at this time, he announced stiffly. Any further complaints about disruptive behavior will result in removal from the terminal. As the officers retreated, a spontaneous round of applause broke out among the onlookers. Several passengers approached the family offering support, contact information, and their own video recordings of the incident. A local news reporter who happened to be passing through the terminal introduced herself, asking if Imani would be willing to comment on what appeared to be a disturbing pattern of discrimination. For a brief moment, it seemed the tide had turned. The public support had forced accountability where official channels had failed. The twins managed small smiles as strangers offered them words of encouragement and small acts of kindness. Then, Jennifer Simmons reappeared, a tablet in hand and a coldly professional smile on her face. Ms. Davis, I've just received notification from our system that your entire reservation with Delta Horizon has been canceled due to security concerns. This includes your return flight as well. You'll need to make alternative arrangements with another carrier. You're stranding us completely? Imani asked in disbelief. Based on what security concerns? I'm not at liberty to discuss security matters, Jennifer replied smoothly. But I can inform you that you and your children have been added to our internal review list, which means you won't be eligible to book with Delta Horizon for the foreseeable future. The twins' brief moment of relief vanished as they realized their ordeal was far from over. Not only were they stranded at JFK, but they had effectively been blacklisted by one of the country's largest airlines for the crime of requesting equal treatment. Would you stay silent if you saw a mother and her young children being threatened with arrest for simply asking to be treated equally? Comment number 1 if you believe more people should stand up as witnesses when they see injustice happening. Like if you believe the courage of ordinary citizens filming this encounter made a crucial difference. And subscribe if you want to see how this family continues to fight back against a system designed to silence them. How far will this airline go to cover up their discrimination? The answer will shock you. The local news reporter who had witnessed the confrontation, Sofia Rodriguez from WCBS New York, approached Imani as the airline representative walked away. "Ms. Davis, I'm sorry to intrude, but I've been following what's happening. Would you be willing to share your experience with our viewers? This appears to be a troubling case of discrimination that people should know about." Imani hesitated, looking at her exhausted daughters. She had never sought the spotlight, preferring to fight her legal battles in courtrooms rather than in the court of public opinion. But the systematic obstruction they'd faced suggested that traditional avenues of accountability might not be sufficient. "Give me a moment with my daughters," she requested. Kneeling beside the twins, she explained gently, "That reporter wants to tell our story on the news. It might help other families avoid what we've experienced today, but it would mean talking about the embarrassing parts too. What do you think?" Zuri pressed her face into her mother's shoulder, still too traumatized to respond. But Zara straightened her spine with determination beyond her years. "If it helps other kids like us, we should do it," she decided. "Dad always said we have to stand up, even when it's hard." With their consent, Imani agreed to a brief interview in a quieter corner of the terminal. As Sophia prepared her cameraman, Imani's phone chimed with a notification. Delta Horizon's corporate communications team had issued a statement on Twitter. Delta Horizon Airlines is aware of allegations regarding passenger treatment at JFK. We take all complaints seriously and are investigating. Our initial review suggests standard protocols were followed in accordance with FAA safety regulations. Delta Horizon has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination of any kind. The corporate response was swift but hollow, Imani noted, denying wrongdoing before any meaningful investigation could possibly have occurred. Her own social media post had already amassed thousands of retweets and comments, with the hashtag Delta Horizon Discrimination trending nationally. When the cameras began rolling, Sophia asked the twins if they wanted to share their experience. Zuri remained silent, but Zara spoke with remarkable clarity for a 9-year-old. "They wouldn't let us use the bathroom because of how we look," she explained simply. "A white boy got to go right after Mom asked for us. Then they made us feel like criminals for just existing." The raw truth from a child's perspective was devastating in its simplicity. As the interview continued, Imani detailed the escalating pattern of discrimination they'd encountered. Halfway through her account, she noticed several airline representatives hovering nearby, watching with visible concern as their treatment of the family was broadcast live to the New York metropolitan area. Minutes after the interview began streaming on WCBS's social platforms, Imani's phone exploded with notifications. National news networks were picking up the story, requesting comment and follow-up interviews. Civil rights organizations were reaching out offering support and legal assistance. The story was spreading faster than Delta Horizon could contain it. During the interview, Gregory Wilson, CEO of Delta Horizon, issued an emergency statement from the airline's headquarters in Atlanta. Delta Horizon Airlines categorically denies any racial motivation in today's regrettable incident at JFK. Safety protocols sometimes require difficult decisions that may appear discriminatory without full context. We are reviewing the situation and will address any procedural improvements needed. We have reached out to the Davis family to resolve this misunderstanding. Sophia showed Imani the statement on her phone. "Would you like to respond to this?" "We have received no contact from Delta Horizon offering resolution," Imani replied calmly. And characterizing systematic discrimination as a misunderstanding demonstrates the problem. This wasn't a single employee making a poor decision. This was coordinated denial of service across multiple departments, culminating in security threats and complete cancellation of our travel plans. As the interview continued, social media researchers began sharing their findings. Delta Horizon had faced multiple discrimination complaints over the past 5 years. Most settled quietly with non-disclosure agreements. Former employees were breaking their silence, describing an internal culture that encouraged staff to profile passengers based on appearance and treat them accordingly. The interview was reaching its conclusion when 2 men in expensive suits approached, attempted to step between the camera and the family. "This interview needs to end immediately," one announced, handing Sophia a business card identifying him as Delta Horizon's regional legal counsel. "You're broadcasting allegations that could constitute defamation against our company." Sophia, an experienced reporter, stood her ground. "We're conducting a legitimate news interview about a matter of public interest. Your attempt to interrupt constitutes interference with the press." The lawyers turned to Imani. "Ms. Davis, Delta Horizon is prepared to offer compensation and accommodation to resolve this unfortunate misunderstanding, provided this interview ends now and no further public statements are made." "You're attempting to buy my silence rather than address the discrimination my children experienced," Imani observed, loud enough for the still-rolling cameras to capture. "That speaks volumes about your priorities as a company." The confrontation with Delta Horizon's legal team only fueled public interest in the story. Within hours, major networks from CNN to MSNBC were covering the unfolding situation at JFK. Social media users began sharing their own experiences of discrimination while flying, specifically tagging Delta Horizon in their posts. As evening approached, the Davis family remained stranded at JFK with no clear path forward. Their connecting flight had long since departed, and Delta Horizon had effectively blacklisted them. The twins were exhausted, hungry, and traumatized by the day's events. Then an unexpected ally emerged. The CEO of Skyway Airlines, Delta Horizon's major competitor, contacted Imani directly. "Ms. Davis, we've been following your family's experience today, and we're appalled by the treatment you've received. Skyway Airlines would be honored to provide complimentary first-class transportation to San Francisco for you and your daughters, along with accommodation at the Fairmont Hotel tonight, if you'd prefer to rest before traveling." The generous offer provided immediate practical relief, but the damage from the day's events couldn't be so easily undone. The twins remained withdrawn, their excitement about the science competition overshadowed by the trauma of public humiliation and systemic discrimination. That evening, from their luxury hotel suite provided by Skyway Airlines, Imani watched as Delta Horizon issued yet another statement, this one markedly different in tone. After reviewing today's events at JFK, Delta Horizon acknowledges that our service fell short of our standards. "We extend our sincere apologies to the Davis family and are taking immediate steps to address the situation, including additional staff training and protocol reviews. We have reached out to offer compensation and hope to make amends for their negative experience." The public apology came too late. Public sentiment had turned decisively against the airline, with thousands canceling reservations and loyalty members publicly cutting up their frequent flyer cards. Delta Horizon's stock had dropped nearly 6% in after-hours trading, as investors recognized the potential financial impact of the growing scandal. Imani was preparing the twins for bed when her phone rang. It was Marcus, her attorney colleague. "Imani, I've received a disturbing tip from someone claiming to be a Delta Horizon employee. They say the company is in full crisis mode, with executives ordering a coordinated cover-up. They've allegedly instructed staff to alter records of today's incidents and are preparing a narrative to discredit you personally." "That's not surprising," Imani replied wearily. "Standard corporate damage control." "This goes beyond standard," Marcus warned. The tipster mentioned specific discussions about using your advocacy work to paint you as an opportunist who fabricated discrimination claims for publicity. They're apparently planning to release edited security footage that misrepresents today's events. "Can this source provide evidence of this coordination?" Imani asked, her attorney mind immediately focusing on documentation. "That's why they reached out," Marcus confirmed. "They forwarded internal emails with explicit instructions to alter records." "Imani, this is a conspiracy to commit fraud and obstruct justice. It goes all the way to the executive level." As they spoke, Imani's laptop chimed with an incoming email. The sender was anonymous, but the content was explosive. Internal Delta Horizon communications discussing damage control strategies for the Davis situation, including directives to clean up security logs and revise witness statements. The most disturbing email came from CEO Gregory Wilson himself, instructing staff to find anything in her background we can use to discredit her claims. The correspondence revealed that Delta Horizon's public apology was merely a tactical move, while they prepared a more aggressive counter-strategy, including plans to paint Imani as a professional grievance opportunist, exploiting her children for publicity and financial gain. This changes everything, Imani realized. What had begun as discriminatory treatment of her daughters had evolved into corporate conspiracy, reaching the highest levels of the company. The evidence in her hands wasn't just about one family's mistreatment. It exposed systemic discrimination, embedded in corporate culture and executive decision-making. The morning after the initial incident, as the twins slept in the hotel suite provided by Skyway Airlines, Imani's phone rang. The caller ID showed an unlisted number. "Ms. Davis, my name is Janet Reynolds. I'm a senior data analyst at Delta Horizon Airlines." The woman's voice was hushed, nervous. "I need to meet with you urgently. What I have to share could explain why your family was targeted yesterday." Imani's years as an attorney had taught her to be cautious. "I appreciate your call, Ms. Reynolds, but I'd need more information before agreeing to a meeting." "I understand your hesitation," Janet replied. "I've worked for Delta Horizon for 11 years. 6 months ago, I was assigned to a confidential project called Passenger Flow Optimization. What they didn't tell me was that I was actually helping develop a passenger profiling algorithm that factors in race, nationality, and appearance to determine service levels and security screening intensity." Imani sat up straighter. "Are you saying Delta Horizon has implemented an automated discrimination system?" "It's disguised as a risk assessment tool, but yes," Janet confirmed. "The algorithm assigns passengers a service priority score that determines everything from bathroom access during turbulence to rebooking priority during cancellations. The system consistently deprioritizes passengers of color, especially those traveling with children, under the premise that they're less likely to be high-revenue customers or influential complainants." "Do you have documentation of this?" Imani asked, her mind racing with the legal implications. "Yes, and I'm willing to provide it. When I saw what happened to your daughters yesterday, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. This isn't an isolated incident. It's systematic discrimination by design." They arranged to meet in Imani's hotel suite at noon, with Janet bringing documentation of the algorithm and its implementation. Imani contacted Marcus to join them, remotely for the meeting, his expertise in data privacy and corporate malfeasance potentially crucial for understanding the full implications of Janet's revelations. When Janet arrived, she appeared nervous but resolute. A middle-aged woman with graying hair and sensible clothing, she seemed an unlikely whistleblower. "I've worked in data analytics my entire career," she explained as she set up her laptop. "When they assigned me to this project, they described it as optimizing customer experience based on value metrics. It wasn't until I saw the variables being weighted that I realized what we were actually building." Janet pulled up a complex spreadsheet showing passenger characteristics and corresponding priority scores. The algorithm factored in obvious elements like frequent flyer status and ticket price, but also included variables like ethnic appearance descriptor, accent, detection metric, and cultural attire indicator. The system automatically downscores passengers it identifies as likely minorities, Janet explained. "It's disguised in technical jargon, but the effect is clear. Passengers of color consistently receive lower service priority. The algorithm even factors in whether children are present, assuming families of color with children are more likely to create service burdens without corresponding revenue potential." Imani's blood ran cold as she reviewed the documentation. This isn't just discrimination. It's mechanized bigotry disguised as business optimization. "What's most disturbing is how it's implemented," Janet continued. "Flight attendants, gate agents, and customer service representatives receive passenger scores through their tablets and devices, with color-coded indicators guiding their service responses. They're not explicitly told it's based on race, just that the system has identified priority passengers versus standard service passengers. How widespread is this implementation? Marcus asked from the video call display. System-wide, Janet confirmed. Every Delta Horizon flight, every terminal, every customer interaction is guided by these scores. And I've documented dozens of cases where passengers with identical ticket types and status received dramatically different treatment based primarily on perceived ethnicity. As Janet continued her explanation, Imani noticed a subtle electronic tone emanating from beneath the coffee table. Kneeling down to investigate, she discovered a small listening device magnetically attached to the table's metal frame. "We're being monitored," she whispered, showing the device to Janet without removing it. They continued their conversation while Imani wrote on a notepad. "Room bugged. Continue talking while I search." A methodical sweep of the suite revealed 3 additional listening devices planted in strategic locations. Whoever had bugged the room had done so recently and professionally, suggesting resources far beyond an individual actor. They continued their discussion verbally, while communicating critical points in writing, careful not to alert whoever was monitoring that they'd discovered the surveillance. Janet shared screenshots and data exports from the airline's internal systems, documenting both the discriminatory algorithm and specific cases where it had been applied. "I've identified 27 cases in the past year alone, where Black or Hispanic families with children were denied bathroom access during flight that was granted to white passengers during the same time period," Janet explained, her voice steady despite the distressing revelation of surveillance. The algorithm specifically instructs crew to prioritize passengers with high status scores during limited access scenarios. As they reviewed the evidence, Janet's phone chimed with a text message notification. Her face drained of color as she read it. "It's from my director," she whispered. "I've been terminated, effective immediately, for unauthorized access of proprietary systems and breach of confidentiality. They know I'm here." The speed of the response confirmed their worst fears. Delta Horizon had comprehensive surveillance capabilities and was actively monitoring their whistleblower. The corporation was watching their every move, listening to their conversations and taking immediate action to silence those who threatened to expose their practices. Despite her termination, Janet remained resolute. "I've been documenting everything for months, preparing for this possibility," she explained, producing an encrypted flash drive. "This contains complete records of the algorithm's development, implementation, and effects, including executive communications explicitly acknowledging the racial components. There's also evidence of multiple discrimination complaints that were settled with NDAs over the past 3 years." The flash drive represented a legal nuclear option, evidence that could potentially bring down not just individual employees, but the entire corporate structure that had enabled and benefited from systematic discrimination. It documented a pattern that went far beyond the isolated incidents usually addressed in discrimination claims. "With this evidence, we can pursue a class action lawsuit representing every passenger of color who's flown Delta Horizon in the past 3 years, Marcus explained over the secure video link they'd established. "This isn't just about your family anymore, Imani. This is about holding an entire corporate entity accountable for encoded discrimination." "The executives know how devastating this would be," Janet warned. "They'll do anything to prevent this information from becoming public." As if to confirm her warning, Imani's phone rang with a call from the hotel security office. "Ms. Davis, we need to verify some information about your stay. Our systems show some irregularities with your reservation." Imani recognized the pretext for what it was, another attempt to disrupt their meeting and intimidate them. "My reservation was arranged directly by Skyway Airlines' executive office," she replied coolly. "Any questions should be directed to them." After ending the call, Imani suggested they move their discussion to a more secure location. They gathered Janet's evidence and prepared to leave, but as Janet entered the elevator ahead of Imani, her phone rang again. "Ms. Reynolds, this is hotel security. Your car in the parking garage has been reported as leaking fluid. Could you come down to verify it's yours before we call a hazmat team?" Janet glanced at Imani with concern. "I drove here, but my car was fine when I parked it. Don't go alone." Imani warned, her instincts screaming danger. "Let's check together." When they reached the parking garage, they found Janet's modest sedan surrounded by hotel security personnel. As they approached, a security officer held up his hand to stop them. "Please stay back, ma'am. There appears to be a brake fluid leak. Could be dangerous." Janet took a step forward to inspect her vehicle, then froze as she noticed a small pool of liquid beneath the car that hadn't been there when she parked. Before she could retreat, the security officer inexplicably stepped aside, allowing her to approach. "Wait!" Imani called out, but it was too late. Janet had barely reached her car when she stumbled suddenly, clutching her chest. She collapsed beside her vehicle, gasping for breath as Imani rushed to her side. The security officers mysteriously disappeared, leaving them alone in the garage. "Can't breathe," Janet gasped, her face contorted with pain. "Not accident. Imani immediately called emergency services while checking Janet's pulse, which was racing erratically. Within minutes, paramedics arrived and rushed Janet to the nearest hospital, diagnosing a potential cardiac event during preliminary treatment. At the hospital, doctors struggled to identify the cause of Janet's symptoms. Her condition stabilized, but remained serious, and she was transferred to intensive care, unable to communicate further with Imani. A preliminary toxicology report showed unusual compounds in her system that the doctors couldn't immediately identify. While waiting anxiously at the hospital, Imani received an anonymous text message. "Car brake line tampering is hard to prove. Accidents happen to whistleblowers. You should reconsider your next steps carefully." The threat was unmistakable. Delta Horizon wasn't just fighting to protect its reputation. It was apparently willing to physically harm those who threatened to expose its practices. A corporation with thousands of employees, billions in revenue, and extensive political connections had just escalated from discrimination to what appeared to be attempted murder. Imani called Marcus immediately. "They went after Janet," she reported grimly. "Some kind of poisoning made to look like a heart attack. She's stabilized but unconscious." "My God," Marcus breathed. "This goes beyond corporate malfeasance. We need to get law enforcement involved immediately." "Local police would be out of their depth against Delta's legal team," Imani pointed out. "We need federal involvement, FBI Public Corruption Unit or DOJ Civil Rights Division, and we need to secure the evidence before they try to destroy it." As they spoke, Imani noticed a man in a dark suit watching her from across the hospital waiting room, making no attempt to disguise his surveillance. When she met his gaze directly, he simply smiled and tapped his watch, as if to say her time was running out. The corporate machine had revealed the depths it would go to protect itself. What had begun with denying bathroom access to two little girls had exposed a rot that ran throughout one of America's largest airlines. Automated discrimination, corporate conspiracy, intimidation, and now apparent attempted murder. Imani realized the flash drive in her possession wasn't just evidence, it was now a lifeline. Potentially the only thing protecting her family from those who had already demonstrated they would stop at nothing to silence threats to their operation. The hospital room where Janet Reynolds lay unconscious was eerily quiet, except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors. Imani sat beside her bed, the flash drive of evidence secured in an encrypted cloud account with access instructions sent to multiple attorneys across the country as insurance. Have you ever felt that powerful institutions would go to any length to silence those who expose their wrongdoing? Comment number 1 if you believe corporations often place profits above human dignity, or number 2 if you're shocked by how quickly this escalated from discrimination to apparent attempted murder. Hit subscribe if you want to see how this family stands strong against seemingly insurmountable corporate power. Imani's phone rang, displaying the hotel's number. "Ms. Davis, this is front desk security. We've received some concerning reports of individuals asking about your room number. As a precaution, we've assigned hotel security to your floor." "Thank you," Imani replied, a chill running down her spine. "My daughters are alone in the room right now. Can you confirm someone is with them immediately?" "We have personnel en route," the security officer assured her. "We've also alerted local police to increase patrols near the hotel." Imani ended the call and immediately dialed the twins' room. When Zara answered, Imani kept her voice calm despite her racing heart. "Sweetheart, hotel security is sending someone to check on you. Don't open the door for anyone else. I'm coming back right now." "Mom, someone's already been knocking," Zara whispered, fear evident in her voice. "They said they were room service, but we didn't order anything." "Stay in the bathroom and lock the door," Imani instructed, already running toward the hospital exit. "Don't make any noise. I'll be there in 15 minutes. The taxi ride back to the hotel was excruciating, each minute stretching like an hour, as Imani imagined the worst. When she finally reached the twins' floor, she found 2 hotel security guards stationed outside their door. "We've secured the room, Ms. Davis," one informed her. "There was an unauthorized attempt to enter using a service key card, but our systems flagged it as suspicious since no service was scheduled." Inside the room, the twins rushed into their mother's arms, trembling with fear. "Someone tried to come in twice, Mom," Zuri explained, her voice small and frightened. "They jiggled the handle really hard the second time." Hotel security had preserved surveillance footage showing a man in a hotel uniform attempting to enter their room. The uniform appeared genuine, but the hotel had no record of maintenance or housekeeping scheduled for their suite. The security breach was sophisticated and suggested inside access to hotel operations. As Imani comforted her daughters, her phone chimed with an email notification. The subject line made her blood run cold. "Science Olympiad registration canceled." The email, from the National Junior Science Olympiad Organizing Committee, stated, "Due to concerns raised about the validity of qualification documentation, the registration for participants Zara and Zuri Davis has been placed under review. Per competition policy, participants under review are ineligible to compete pending resolution." "Someone's trying to take away the competition too?" Zara asked, reading the email over her mother's shoulder. After everything they'd endured, this targeted attack on the twins' academic achievement felt particularly cruel. Imani contacted the competition organizers immediately, only to be told that they had received anonymous documentation questioning the authenticity of the twins' qualifying submissions, with the complaint coming from an email address associated with the Department of Education. It was a sophisticated attempt to use official channels to further punish the family for speaking out. As Imani worked to resolve the false complaint, she received a call from Skyway Airline's security team. "Ms. Davis, we've discovered some concerning information you should be aware of. The hotel where you're staying is owned by Horizon Global Partners, a subsidiary company of Delta Horizon Airlines parent corporation." The revelation explained how their hotel room had been so easily compromised and bugged. They weren't just staying in any hotel, they were effectively housed in property controlled by the very corporation targeting them. "We need to move you immediately," the Skyway representative continued. "We've secured accommodations at an independent property with enhanced security protocols. A car is already en route to your location." The midnight hotel change was executed with military precision. Skyway Airlines had engaged a private security team specializing in executive protection, and the family was transferred to an undisclosed boutique hotel in Manhattan with no corporate affiliations to any airline. Their new accommodation featured a 2-bedroom suite with secure access, private elevator, and 24-hour security personnel stationed in the hallway. The Black Women's Legal Defense Fund, having learned of the family's situation through media coverage, had arranged for additional security professionals to supplement Skyway's team. Despite these precautions, the threats continued to escalate. Around 2 a.m., Imani received an anonymous text message. "Your daughters look peaceful when they sleep. Blue pajamas with stars. Braided hair with purple beads. Second floor, east-facing windows." The message included details that could only be known by someone who had visual access to the twins in their previous hotel room. It was a clear signal that the family remained under surveillance despite their precautions, and that those targeting them had no qualms about threatening children. The security team immediately conducted another sweep of the new suite, discovering a sophisticated listening device that had somehow been planted during the brief window when the room was being prepared for their arrival. The level of resources and coordination required to execute such surveillance suggested involvement beyond just Delta Horizon's security team, possibly including former intelligence professionals or specialized corporate espionage operatives. "We need to assume all electronic communications are compromised," the head of security advised. "They're clearly employing significant resources to monitor your movements and communications." As dawn approached, Imani finally managed a brief, restless sleep, only to be awakened by a commotion in the hallway. The security team had apprehended an individual attempting to access the suite using forged hotel credentials. The man claimed to be testing fire alarm systems, but carried no legitimate identification or equipment. When police arrived to take him into custody, they discovered a hotel uniform concealed in his backpack, along with a key card programmer and other burglary tools. Most disturbing was a small vial of clear liquid that preliminary testing identified as a powerful sedative, enough to render the entire family unconscious. The perpetrator refused to identify his employer, but hotel security cameras captured images of him entering the building alongside a man wearing a Delta Horizon contractor badge. The evidence linking the break-in attempt directly to the airline was circumstantial but compelling. By morning, footage of the attempted break-in had leaked to media outlets, further escalating public outrage against Delta Horizon. The airline issued yet another statement denying any involvement and claiming the contractor badge appeared to be counterfeit. But public sentiment had already turned decisively against them. The private security team, now augmented by off-duty police officers hired by Skyway Airlines, established a secure perimeter around the family's suite. They implemented counter-surveillance measures and restricted all electronic communications to secure channels provided by Marcus's law firm. It was through one of these secure channels that Imani received disturbing news from the twin school principal in Atlanta. "Someone claiming to be from the Department of Education's Cybersecurity Division accessed our systems yesterday," the principal explained. "They claimed to be conducting a routine security audit, but we've since discovered that all academic records for Zara and Zuri have been deleted from our databases. Fortunately, we maintain offline backups, but it was clearly a targeted attack. The systematic assault on every aspect of the family's life, from physical safety to academic achievements, revealed the lengths to which Delta Horizon would go to discredit and silence them. What had begun with bathroom access denial had escalated to corporate espionage, identity fraud, computer crimes, and attempted breaking and entering with what appeared to be intent to drug or harm the family. With each escalation, however, the corporation created more evidence of its conspiracy. The private investigator's arrest provided physical evidence connecting the airline to criminal intimidation. The cyber attack on the school had left digital fingerprints that forensic analysts could trace. The surveillance devices contained serial numbers and technical signatures that could potentially identify their manufacturers and purchasers. As Imani documented each incident and secured the growing body of evidence, she received an unexpected call from the New York State Attorney General's office. "Ms. Davis, we've been monitoring the situation involving your family and Ms. Davis. We've been monitoring the situation involving your family and Delta Horizon Airlines," the Assistant Attorney General explained. "The Attorney General is concerned about the pattern of escalation and potential criminal activities directed at your family. We'd like to offer police protection while our office reviews the evidence for possible state charges." The offer of official protection marked a critical turning point. What had begun as private discrimination had escalated to the point where law enforcement could no longer ignore the criminal implications. The systematic targeting of the Davis family had crossed boundaries that demanded official intervention. With state police officers now supplementing their private security detail, the family finally had a moment to breathe. The twins, exhausted by the constant stress and fear, curled up together on the hotel suite sofa, finding comfort in each other's presence as they had done since infancy. "Is it always going to be like this, Mom?" Zara asked quietly. "People hating us just because of how we look?" Imani sat beside her daughters, choosing her words carefully. "Not always, sweetheart. What's happening now is terrible, but it's also exposing something that needs to change. Sometimes things have to get worse before they can get better." "Like when you have to clean out an infected cut?" Zuri asked, her scientific mind making the connection. "It hurts more at first, but then it can heal properly?" Imani smiled sadly. Exactly like that. And you know what? I believe we're helping to clean out an infection that's been hurting people for a long time. As night fell, their increased security measures finally provided enough safety for the family to get their first real rest since the ordeal began. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as they prepared to take their fight from the court of public opinion to actual courtrooms, where Delta Horizon's army of attorneys awaited. Do you believe this family's courageous stand will lead to real change, or will corporate power ultimately prevail? Hit like if you're inspired by their refusal to back down despite escalating threats. Comment number 1. If you think more whistleblowers like Janet should come forward to expose corporate wrongdoing, and subscribe to find out just how high this conspiracy reaches. What will happen when this family finally gets their day in court? The answer reveals just how deep corporate influence runs in our justice system. 3 days after the initial bathroom incident, the Davis family entered the federal district court in Manhattan. The emergency hearing for a temporary restraining order against Delta Horizon had been expedited due to the escalating threats and evidence of corporate retaliation. Imani, though accustomed to courtrooms, felt a different kind of tension as she prepared to advocate not just as an attorney, but as a mother fighting for her children's safety and dignity. The twins sat quietly in the front row behind their mother, their small frames dwarfed by the imposing courtroom architecture. Zara's face was set in determined concentration, while Zuri nervously twisted a purple bead in her hair. Both girls dressed in matching navy blue dresses that Skyway Airlines had, arranged when they learned the family's luggage remained mysteriously lost in Delta Horizon's system. As Imani organized her evidence binders, the massive oak doors at the rear of the courtroom swung open. A procession of attorneys entered. 15 impeccably dressed men and women from Blackstone and Reed, one of the nation's most powerful corporate law firms. Their appearance alone likely represented millions in legal fees, a show of force designed to intimidate. Lead counsel for Delta Horizon, Harrison Powell, approached Imani with a practiced smile. "Ms. Davis, there's still time to discuss a private settlement. My clients are prepared to be quite generous in exchange for a confidentiality agreement." "Mr. Powell, as I've already informed your associates, this isn't about money," Imani replied, without looking up from her preparations. "This is about systematic discrimination and corporate intimidation that needs to be addressed publicly." Powell's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "We'll see if the judge agrees with your characterization of events." He returned to his team, where they huddled in whispered consultation, occasionally glancing toward the Davis family with calculated assessment. When Judge William Hamilton entered, the preliminary signs weren't encouraging. He barely acknowledged Imani while greeting several of Delta Horizon's attorneys by their first names. As proceedings began, his familiarity with the defense team became increasingly apparent. "Your Honor," Imani began, "we're seeking emergency injunctive relief against Delta Horizon Airlines for discriminatory practices, corporate retaliation, and what we believe constitutes criminal intimidation against my family, including my 9-year-old daughters." Judge Hamilton peered over his glasses. "Ms. Davis, these are extraordinarily serious allegations against a respected American corporation. I assume you have substantive evidence beyond subjective interpretations of standard airline procedures?" "Yes, Your Honor. We have documented evidence including video recordings, witness statements, internal corporate communications demonstrating coordinated discrimination, and police reports regarding surveillance and attempted breaking and entering at our hotel." As Imani detailed the events beginning with the bathroom denial and escalating to physical threats, Judge Hamilton repeatedly interrupted with procedural objections. Each time Imani attempted to introduce evidence of corporate coordination, the judge questioned its relevance or admissibility. "Your Honor," she finally said with barely controlled frustration, "I'm attempting to establish a pattern of escalating retaliation directly linked to our reporting of discrimination. The evidence clearly demonstrates—" "Ms. Davis," Judge Hamilton interrupted, "this court is not a platform for speculative accusations against a major employer and economic contributor to this jurisdiction. You'll need to confine your arguments to specifically documented incidents with direct evidentiary connection to corporate policy." The procedural barriers continued mounting until Marcus, observing from the gallery, passed Imani a hastily scribbled note. Hamilton previously represented Delta Parent Company 2018-2022 before appointment to bench. Clear conflict of interest. The revelation explained the judge's obvious bias, but challenging a federal judge for conflict of interest mid-hearing carried significant risks. Before Imani could decide how to proceed, Judge Hamilton made an unexpected request. The court would like to hear directly from the minors involved in this case. Ms. Davis, would your daughters be willing to provide testimony regarding their experience? Imani glanced at the twins, who had not been prepared for direct testimony. Putting them through more trauma by having them relive their humiliation publicly seemed unnecessarily cruel. Yet Hamilton's request also presented an opportunity to humanize the case beyond legal technicalities. After a brief consultation with the girls, Imani replied, "Yes, Your Honor. My daughters are willing to speak to their experience." Zara approached the witness stand first, her small frame barely visible above the wooden barrier. Despite her youth, she spoke with remarkable clarity, describing the bathroom denial, the security targeting, and the subsequent threats with precision that belied her 9 years. "The flight attendant told my mom it was against the rules for us to use the bathroom," she explained. "But then she let a white boy go right after. My sister had an accident because they wouldn't let her go, and everyone could see. People said mean things about us smelling bad. They made us feel like we weren't even people." When asked about the security incidents, Zara's voice grew quieter, but remained steady. "I was scared the police would hurt my mom like they hurt my dad. Then people tried to break into our hotel room. Mom says it's because they don't want anyone to know what the airline did to us." Zuri's testimony followed, her more emotional account of the humiliation bringing several spectators to tears. "I tried to hold it as long as I could," she explained in a small voice. "But they kept saying no, only to us. Then everyone was looking at me and laughing. I just wanted to disappear." The twins' straightforward testimony created a palpable shift in the courtroom atmosphere. Even several of Delta Horizon's attorneys appeared uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact with their clients, as the children described their experience. Judge Hamilton, however, remained unmoved. After hearing arguments from both sides, he delivered his ruling with barely concealed bias. While this court sympathizes with any discomfort experienced by the minor plaintiffs, the evidence presented fails to establish discriminatory intent or corporate retaliation, meeting the high standard required for emergency injunctive relief. The temporary restraining order is hereby denied, and this matter is referred to standard civil procedure channels for further consideration. The ruling effectively denied the family any immediate protection from Delta Horizon's escalating tactics. As court adjourned, Powell approached with another settlement offer, this one including a non-disclosure agreement so comprehensive it would prohibit the family from ever mentioning Delta Horizon in any context. "This is their final offer," Powell stated confidently. "You've seen how this will play out in court. Take the money and put this behind you." Instead of responding directly, Imani turned to her legal assistant who had been seated in the gallery. "File our appeal and emergency motion with the Second Circuit immediately, and contact the Judicial Ethics Committee regarding Judge Hamilton's undisclosed prior relationship with the defendant." Powell's confidence faltered. "You're making a mistake, Ms. Davis. No one wins against Delta Horizon in the long run." "We'll see about that," Imani replied, gathering her materials as media representatives waited just outside the courtroom doors. The family had barely returned to their secure hotel when Imani received notification that an appellate judge had granted an emergency stay of Hamilton's ruling, citing serious concerns about procedural irregularities and potential judicial conflict of interest. The appellate court ordered an expedited review of the case by a different district judge, specifically addressing the evidence of corporate retaliation that Hamilton had dismissed. While the legal battle continued, an unexpected ally emerged. An anonymous message arrived through Marcus's secure communications channel. "Board meeting yesterday heated. Not all of us support how this is being handled. Some of us believe CEO Wilson has gone too far. Evidence being preserved despite destruction orders. We'll contact again when safe." The message was signed simply, "Board Member," suggesting a division within Delta Horizon's leadership. The corporate monolith was showing cracks, with at least some executives recognizing that the campaign against the Davis family had crossed ethical and legal boundaries. This potential ally provided a glimmer of hope, but was quickly overshadowed by a new attack. Imani received formal notice from the Georgia State Bar Association that an ethics complaint had been filed against her, alleging misuse of legal credentials to intimidate service personnel and fabrication of discrimination claims for financial gain. The complaint was suspiciously detailed, citing witness statements from airline staff that contradicted video evidence. The coordinated assault now targeted not just the family's immediate safety, but Imani's professional standing, her ability to practice law and support her children. The ethics complaint, while clearly fraudulent, would require formal response and could potentially trigger licensing reviews that would drain resources from their fight against Delta Horizon. "They're trying to destroy everything about us," Imani realized as she read the complaint. "Our safety, the girls' education, my career, they won't stop until we're completely silenced." Yet with each escalation, Delta Horizon created more evidence of corporate conspiracy and retaliation. The ethics complaint contained details that could only have come from airline executives, creating a documentary trail linking corporate leadership directly to the intimidation campaign. Each attack strengthened their legal case, even as it increased the personal toll on the family. That night, as the twins finally slept under the watchful eyes of their security detail, Imani made a crucial strategic decision. Defense alone was insufficient against an opponent with such vast resources. To protect her family, she would need to take the offensive, bringing the fight directly to those responsible for the campaign against them. By the time dawn broke over Manhattan, Imani had developed a comprehensive counteroffensive. Her first call was to Marcus, who had been coordinating with a network of civil rights attorneys across the country. "We've identified at least 37 potential plaintiffs with similar experiences on Delta Horizon flights," Marcus reported. "The algorithm Whistleblower Janet exposed gives us grounds for a class action that could involve thousands of passengers." "What's Janet's condition?" Imani asked, concerned for the whistleblower whose courage had cost her so much. "Stable, but still under medical sedation." Toxicology finally identified the substance, a sophisticated compound that mimics natural cardiac distress, nearly untraceable unless specifically tested for. Definitely not amateur work. While Marcus continued building the class action framework, Imani received an encrypted message from their anonymous board member ally. "CEO Wilson, attending exclusive fundraiser tonight at JFK International Terminal 4 private dining room. Board members and major investors present. Minimal security to avoid attention." The message included details about the event's timing and exact location, valuable intelligence about where Delta Horizon's leadership would be vulnerable to public confrontation. It was an opportunity to face those responsible directly, with media witnesses to ensure safety and transparency. Imani immediately began preparations, coordinating with the legal team, security personnel, and select media contacts who had demonstrated journalistic integrity in their coverage. Simultaneously, a coordinated social media campaign organized by civil rights groups was revealing hundreds of similar discrimination cases involving Delta Horizon, creating a virtual tsunami of testimonials from affected passengers. By late afternoon, airport employees from multiple airlines had learned of the planned confrontation through insider channels. Many had witnessed discrimination against passengers but feared reporting it due to corporate retaliation. Now, seeing the Davis family's public stand, they began organizing their own solidarity action. As evening approached, the twins sat with their mother in the secure vehicle provided by their protection team. "Are you sure you want to come with me?" Imani asked them. "You could stay with the security team at the hotel." Zara shook her head, firmly. "We need to be there, Mom. It's our story too." Zuri nodded in agreement. "Dad always said we have to stand up together. He'd want us there." The family had prepared powerful statements based on their experience, the twins working together to craft honest, direct language about how discrimination had affected them personally. Though composed by children, their words carried moral weight that corporate legal defenses couldn't easily dismiss. When they arrived at JFK Terminal 4, they found an unexpected sight. Dozens of airline employees from various carriers had gathered in the public area near the private dining room. Entrants, many wearing small purple ribbons, the same color as the beads in the twins' hair, now an emerging symbol of solidarity against discrimination. Among the gathering crowd were passengers from their original flight who had witnessed the bathroom denial, TSA agents who had been troubled by the security targeting, and hotel staff who had helped document the surveillance devices. What had begun as one family's ordeal had catalyzed a movement of witnesses unwilling to remain silent. As Gregory Wilson, CEO of Delta Horizon, arrived with his entourage of executives and board members, he was visibly startled by the gathered crowd. His security detail moved to create a buffer between him and the onlookers, but the narrow terminal corridor made isolation impossible. Imani stepped forward, the twins beside her, all three wearing microphones connected to the media representatives positioned strategically throughout the area. "Mr. Wilson," she called clearly, "I'm Imani Davis. These are my daughters, Zara and Zuri, who were denied bathroom access on your airline due to racial discrimination." Wilson attempted to maintain his corporate composure, offering a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Ms. Davis, this is hardly the appropriate venue for discussing customer service matters. Our communications team would be happy to arrange a private meeting. Privacy serves your interests, not justice," Imani replied, her voice amplified by strategically placed media. "My daughters were humiliated publicly. Your company surveilled us, threatened us, and attempted to destroy our reputations and livelihoods. When we spoke out, these are not customer service matters. They are civil rights violations and potentially criminal acts authorized at the executive level." Wilson's expression hardened as he glanced toward the exit, calculating an escape route. "These are unfounded allegations that will be addressed through proper legal channels. Now, if you'll excuse me. Your algorithm that categorizes passengers by race was exposed by your own data analyst," Imani continued, blocking his path. "Janet Reynolds nearly died after revealing your systematic discrimination practices. We have the evidence, Mr. Wilson, including board communications ordering document destruction and approving the surveillance operation against my family." At the mention of internal documents, several board members in Wilson's entourage exchanged alarmed glances. One older man with a distinguished appearance stepped slightly away from the CEO, creating physical distance that spoke volumes about growing internal divisions. Wilson's forced smile vanished completely. "This is corporate harassment and interference with a private event. Security, please remove Ms. Davis and her children." Before security could respond, Zara stepped forward, her small voice nonetheless carrying clearly through the terminal. "You made my sister wet herself in front of everyone because we're black. Then you sent people to hurt us. You think because you're rich and powerful, you can hurt kids like us. Is that the kind of person you want to be?" The directness of a child's moral challenge visibly rattled Wilson, who found himself speechless before the 9-year-old's unflinching gaze. In the uncomfortable silence, Zuri added her own quiet question. "Did you think about how scared we were when people tried to break into our hotel room? Did you care that we couldn't sleep because we were afraid?" The human impact of corporate decisions, laid bare through children's voices, created a moment of uncomfortable truth that corporate jargon and legal shields couldn't deflect. Several board members appeared visibly disturbed by the direct confrontation with the human consequences of policies they had approved. The distinguished older board member who had distanced himself from Wilson finally spoke. "Mr. Wilson, I believe we should address these serious allegations directly rather than dismissing them." Turning to Imani, he added, "I'm Robert Keller, Independent Board Director. Some of us have expressed concerns about the company's response to your complaint. Would you be willing to present your evidence to the full board immediately?" This unexpected fracture in corporate solidarity represented a critical opportunity. While Wilson sputtered objections, Keller led a small rebellion among board members present, insisting on reviewing the evidence that evening rather than allowing the situation to deteriorate further. The impromptu board meeting took place in the terminal's conference room, with several major investors joining remotely after news of the confrontation spread through financial circles. Delta Horizon stock had already dropped nearly 15% since the initial incident, with major institutional investors expressing concerns about potential legal liability and reputational damage. Imani presented a comprehensive evidence portfolio documenting not just the original discrimination, but the subsequent corporate conspiracy to silence her family. The whistleblower data, internal communications, surveillance documentation, and medical evidence regarding Janet's suspected poisoning created a devastating portrait of corporate misconduct reaching the highest levels. The twins waited outside, with their security detail during the presentation, protected from the graphic details of threats against them, while remaining visible reminders of the human beings affected by corporate algorithms and executive decisions. As the evidence mounted, several board members began openly challenging Wilson's leadership. One demanded to know who had authorized surveillance operations against a family with children. Another questioned the legality of the passenger scoring algorithm with its racial components. Investors on the video conference expressed growing alarm about potential liability and regulatory consequences. Wilson attempted to deflect responsibility to overzealous security contractors and misinterpreted directives, but the documentary evidence repeatedly contradicted his claims. When confronted with his own emails ordering whatever measures necessary to prevent the discrimination evidence from becoming public, he finally resorted to silence, conferring urgently with legal counsel. The board meeting stretched into hours as directors grappled with mounting evidence of corporate malfeasance significantly beyond what most had realized. By midnight, Delta Horizon stock was falling in Asian markets as news of the confrontation and emergency board meetings spread globally. At 1:47 a.m., Robert Keller emerged from the conference room to address Imani directly. "Ms. Davis, the board has voted to place CEO Wilson and 3 senior executives on administrative leave pending a comprehensive independent investigation. We are prepared to offer an immediate good faith settlement regarding your family's experience, with no confidentiality requirements, and full cooperation with any civil or criminal investigations regarding the retaliation you experienced." It represented a major victory, corporate accountability at the highest levels. Yet Imani recognized, it is merely a first step. The settlement must include systematic reforms to prevent discrimination against other passengers, elimination of the racial components in your passenger scoring algorithm, and compensation for all affected by these practices. Keller nodded soberly. "Those terms will be part of our discussions. The board has already voted to suspend the algorithm in question immediately and to preserve all related data for review by appropriate authorities." As dawn approached, the stock markets opening across Europe registered the corporate earthquake occurring within Delta Horizon. Major shareholders were demanding answers, regulatory agencies announcing investigations, and competitor airlines strategically distancing themselves while implementing hasty reviews of their own customer scoring systems. The Davis family returned to their secure hotel, exhausted but having achieved a decisive breakthrough. The twins, despite their exhaustion, showed the first genuine smiles since their ordeal began. "Did we win, Mom?" Zuri asked sleepily as Imani tucked them into bed. "We've won an important battle," Imani answered truthfully, "but making sure this never happens to another family will take more work." "We'll help," Zara mumbled, already half asleep. "Right after we win the science competition." The science competition. Imani had almost forgotten their original purpose, for traveling amid the chaos of recent days. With Delta Horizon's leadership in turmoil and board members now eager to demonstrate good faith, reinstating the twins' competition registration required just a single phone call. By morning, their participation was confirmed, with Skyway Airlines arranging priority transportation to ensure they would arrive in time. The corporate Goliath had not fallen completely, but its armor had been pierced, exposing vulnerabilities that could no longer be concealed behind legal threats and PR statements. What began with 2 little girls being denied a basic human dignity had revealed structural discrimination embedded within corporate algorithms, policies, and culture, a revelation that would ultimately transform an industry. The following morning, while the twins prepared for their rescheduled flight to San Francisco, Imani received word of spontaneous demonstrations forming at Delta Horizon ticket counters across the country. The public outrage that had begun on Social media had transformed into physical protests, with travelers deliberately booking tickets on other airlines and airport employees wearing purple ribbons in solidarity. Despite the board's emergency actions, many felt that simply suspending executives was insufficient accountability for the systematic discrimination and subsequent intimidation campaign. Civil rights organizations were calling for complete leadership overhaul, regulatory investigation, and industry-wide reforms to prevent similar abuses across the aviation sector. Imani recognized that this moment of public awareness created a unique opportunity for systematic change. After ensuring the twins were safely on their way to the science competition with a trusted security team, she returned to JFK Terminal 4 where the largest demonstration was gathering momentum. She arrived to find hundreds of supporters wearing matching purple shirts with the slogan, "Dignity for all passengers." Flight attendants from multiple airlines, many risking disciplinary action, had joined in uniform. TSA agents, while unable to actively participate while on duty, displayed purple ribbons on their uniforms in subtle defiance of neutrality requirements. Delta Horizon attempted to manage the growing protest by closing their check-in counters, citing security concerns. But this only redirected demonstrators to gather in the main terminal, where their presence would affect all airline operations. Airport authorities, caught between corporate pressure and free speech considerations, initially attempted to restrict the demonstration to designated areas outside the terminal. The situation escalated when Delta Horizon executives, still struggling to contain the crisis despite the board's intervention, made a critical miscalculation. They filed an emergency request with airport authorities to close the entire terminal to anyone not holding a valid boarding pass, effectively attempting to shut down the demonstration through administrative means. When airport police began instructing non-travelers to exit the terminal, including media representatives covering the story, the protest transformed from peaceful assembly to determined civil disobedience. Participants sat down en masse on the terminal floor, making forced removal logistically impossible without creating disturbing visuals of police dragging peaceful protesters, including uniformed airline employees. At the center of this growing standoff, Imani was asked to address the gathered supporters. Standing on a chair to be visible to the hundreds now filling the terminal, she spoke with the measured clarity that had made her an effective attorney. "This demonstration isn't just about what happened to my daughters," she began. "It's about a system that coded discrimination into its algorithms and business practices, that treated certain passengers as less deserving of basic human dignity based on their appearance. When challenged, this system turned its vast resources against a family with children, rather than acknowledging and correcting its failures." As she spoke, the twins' experience became a powerful symbol of larger systemic issues affecting countless passengers. Individuals in the crowd began spontaneously sharing their own experiences of discrimination while traveling, stories that spanned decades and crossed airline boundaries, suggesting an industry-wide problem rather than isolated incidents. Delta Horizon's leadership, monitoring the situation from their corporate headquarters, made another devastating miscalculation. In an attempt to disrupt the demonstration's momentum, they ordered a complete shutdown of their electronic systems in Terminal 4, including check-in kiosks, boarding pass scanners, and flight information displays. The electronic blackout, intended to create confusion and disperse the crowd, instead strengthened solidarity as airline employees from other carriers stepped in to help stranded Delta Horizon passengers. The contrast between corporate obstruction and human compassion played out in real time before media cameras, further damaging Delta Horizon's already battered reputation. What executives failed to anticipate was that their desperate system shutdown triggered automated security alerts to federal aviation authorities. Within an hour, representatives from the Federal Aviation Administration arrived at Terminal 4, concerned about potential cybersecurity breaches affecting critical aviation infrastructure. When FAA officials discovered that Delta Horizon had deliberately disabled critical passenger processing systems to counter a peaceful protest, their professional concern transformed into regulatory intervention. The senior FAA representative, Catherine Alvarez, requested an immediate meeting with all available Delta Horizon executives and board members. Deliberately disabling passenger processing systems for non-safety reasons potentially violates multiple federal regulations regarding common carrier obligations, Alvarez explained to the hastily assembled leadership team. The FAA is considering emergency action regarding Delta Horizon's operating certificate if systems are not immediately restored and normal operations resumed. The threat of losing their operating certificate, effectively grounding their entire fleet nationwide, represented an existential threat to the airline that dwarfed even the public relations disaster unfolding in Terminal 4. Board members, including Robert Keller, who had previously shown sympathy to the Davis family's situation, now faced the potential collapse of the company's entire operation. "We need 30 minutes to convene an emergency board video conference," Keller requested. The decision to disable terminal systems was made without board approval and contradicts the directives issued last night. While the board frantically assembled, Imani continued addressing the demonstration, which had now grown to include passengers from numerous flights whose travel had been disrupted by Delta Horizon's system shutdown. The corporate attempt to silence protest had instead amplified it exponentially, creating thousands of newly inconvenienced travelers witnessing the situation firsthand. Inside a hastily repurposed conference room, the Delta Horizon board faced the most consequential decision in the company's history. The FAA representative had made clear that only immediate, comprehensive action would prevent emergency suspension of their operating certificate. The remaining executives who had authorized the system shutdown were quickly sacrificed, but regulatory authorities made clear that deeper accountability and structural reforms were required. Robert Keller emerged from the conference room looking grim, but resolved. Approaching Imani directly despite the crowd, he requested a moment to address the demonstration. With media cameras rolling, he stepped onto the improvised platform where Imani had been speaking. "My name is Robert Keller, Independent Director of Delta Horizon Airlines. On behalf of the board, I want to acknowledge the legitimate grievances raised by the Davis family and many others regarding discriminatory treatment. The board has just taken emergency action to address this crisis at its roots." He paused, visibly uncomfortable but continuing with evident determination. Effective immediately, CEO Gregory Wilson and the entire executive leadership team have been removed from their positions. The passenger scoring algorithm with racial components has been permanently deactivated. The board has authorized the creation of an independent passenger rights commission with oversight authority regarding all service policies and practices. These dramatic announcements represented unprecedented corporate accountability. But Keller wasn't finished. Most importantly, Delta Horizon acknowledges that discrimination occurred, that corporate resources were improperly used to intimidate those who reported it, and that this represents a fundamental betrayal of our obligations as a common carrier, serving the public. As he concluded, the terminal's electronic systems suddenly reactivated, displays showing all previously canceled flights now rescheduled. The corporate surrender was complete, a public admission of wrongdoing and concrete commitment to structural reforms that would transform the airline's operations. The demonstration had achieved in hours what years of individual complaints and regulatory oversight had failed to accomplish. The collective power of witnesses, employees, and affected passengers, amplified by media coverage and social media dissemination, had forced accountability from one of the nation's largest corporations. As the crowd erupted in cheers and applause, Imani experienced a complex mixture of vindication and exhaustion. The system that had humiliated her daughters had been forced to acknowledge its failures publicly and commit to meaningful reform. Yet the human cost had been enormous. Janet still hospitalized, the twins traumatized, their family's privacy and security violated in ways that would have lasting impact. The terminal confrontation represented a decisive victory, but the work of true systematic change was just beginning. As corporate accountability finally took concrete form, Imani turned her focus to ensuring the promised reforms would be implemented with transparency and ongoing oversight. The legal battles, regulatory complaints, and class action development would continue for months, perhaps years. But the power dynamic had fundamentally shifted. The corporate Goliath had not merely stumbled, it had been forced to acknowledge its fundamental failures and commit to transformation under the watchful eyes of those it had harmed. What began with the denial of basic human dignity to two 9-year-old girls had culminated in an industry-changing moment of accountability that would protect countless future passengers. 6 months after the initial bathroom denial incident, Imani Davis stood at a podium in the main conference room of the Department of Transportation in Washington, D.C. Beside her, the twins had grown nearly an inch taller, their matching purple dresses and confident postures reflecting the remarkable journey they had undergone from victims to catalysts for change. The assembled audience included regulatory officials, airline industry representatives, civil rights advocates, and media from around the world. On the wall behind them, a large screen displayed the official seal of the newly established Federal Airline Passenger Rights Commission, the unprecedented regulatory body created in direct response to the Delta Horizon discrimination case. Today marks the official implementation of the Davis Standards for Equal Treatment in Air Transportation, announced Transportation Secretary Marcus Rodriguez. These comprehensive regulations establish concrete accountability measures, independent oversight mechanisms, and systematic protections that will transform how airlines serve all passengers regardless of race, nationality, or appearance. The YAS regulations represented the most significant expansion of passenger rights protections in aviation history. Airlines would be prohibited from using demographic factors in service prioritization algorithms, required to implement transparent bathroom access policies, and subjected to regular civil rights compliance audits. Most importantly, the regulations established powerful whistleblower protections and created a dedicated enforcement division with actual investigative authority. As Secretary Rodriguez introduced her, Imani reflected on the extraordinary sequence of events that had transformed her family's traumatic experience into industry-wide reform. The class action lawsuit against Delta Horizon had ultimately included over 4,000 plaintiffs who had experienced similar discrimination, resulting in a historic $1.2 billion settlement that included not just financial compensation but mandatory structural reforms. Janet Reynolds, finally recovered from her poisoning, had received special recognition from the Department of Justice for her courage in exposing the discriminatory algorithm. Criminal indictments had been issued against former CEO Gregory Wilson and 3 executives for conspiracy, witness intimidation, and computer crimes. The corporate culture that had authorized surveillance and intimidation of a family with children had been exposed to public scrutiny that made similar abuses impossible to hide in the future. Delta Horizon itself had undergone complete transformation under new leadership specifically selected for their background in civil rights and corporate ethics. The airline had emerged from its crisis as an unlikely industry leader in equitable service policies, implementing passenger rights protections that exceeded federal requirements and establishing an independent passenger advocacy office with actual authority to resolve complaints. 6 months ago, my daughters were denied a basic human dignity that was provided to their white counterparts. Imani began her address. What followed was a systematic attempt to silence our family using corporate resources, surveillance, intimidation, and reputation destruction. But what was intended to silence us instead revealed structural discrimination that affected thousands of passengers across the aviation industry. She gestured to the twins, who stepped forward with practiced confidence. My daughters have asked to share what this experience has taught them, in their own words. Zara spoke first, her voice clear and steady. When they wouldn't let us use the bathroom because of how we look, it made us feel like we weren't really people to them. But standing up about it showed us that when something wrong happens, speaking the truth can change things for everyone, not just yourself. Zuri continued seamlessly where her sister left off. Our dad used to tell us that justice isn't just about one person winning, but about fixing the system so everyone gets treated right. We didn't just want an apology. We wanted to make sure no other kids would feel how we felt that day. Their simple eloquence brought many in the audience to tears. These children, initially traumatized by discrimination and corporate intimidation, had emerged as poised advocates whose experience had catalyzed industry-wide transformation. The Davis Standards were remarkable, not just for their comprehensive passenger protections, but for the unprecedented financial penalties attached to violations. Airlines would face fines of up to $250,000 per discriminatory incident, with cumulative patterns potentially triggering operating certificate reviews. Corporate executives would bear personal liability for retaliatory actions against discrimination reports, eliminating the protective shield of corporate structure that had previously insulated decision-makers from accountability. Most significantly, the settlements established the Davis Family Foundation for Equal Treatment in Public Accommodations, funded with $300 million from the class action proceeds. The foundation would provide legal representation to individuals experiencing discrimination in transportation, hospitality, and public services, ensuring that future victims would not face corporate power alone. Beyond the formal regulations, the case had transformed public expectations regarding corporate accountability. Passengers across all transportation sectors had become more vigilant about documenting discriminatory treatment, creating a crowdsourced accountability network that corporations could no longer dismiss or intimidate into silence. Financial markets had registered this shift in power dynamics, with investor scrutiny of corporate discrimination complaints intensifying dramatically. Companies with patterns of bias complaints faced not just regulatory consequences, but significant stock devaluations as institutional investors incorporated discrimination risks into their assessment models. As the ceremonial signing of the new regulations concluded, Secretary Rodriguez presented special recognition awards to the twins for their courage in sharing their experience despite personal cost. The girls had not only reclaimed their dignity, but had transformed their trauma into protection for countless others, a legacy that would outlast any individual settlement or regulation. The twins had indeed participated in the National Junior Science Olympiad, arriving just in time for their presentation on microfluidics and capturing first place despite the extraordinary circumstances surrounding their journey. Their victory had garnered additional media attention, further humanizing their experience and countering corporate attempts to dismiss them as disgruntled passengers. In the months following the incident, their academic achievements had continued to flourish, with both girls developing a particular interest in algorithmic ethics and bias detection, turning their traumatic experience into intellectual motivation to prevent similar discrimination in emerging technologies. As the formal ceremony concluded and attendees mingled during the reception, Gregory Wilson's trial date was announced on news tickers visible on the conference room monitors. The former CEO faced potential imprisonment for his role in authorizing surveillance and intimidation against the Davis family. Corporate power had met its match in the determined advocacy of a mother protecting her children. The final vindication came in the form of the official name applied to the comprehensive new regulatory framework, the Davis Standard, ensuring that the family's stand against discrimination would be referenced in corporate boardrooms, training programs, and policy discussions for decades to come. What had begun with two little girls simply needing to use the restroom had culminated in a transformation of corporate accountability, passenger rights, and public expectations that would protect countless travelers from similar discrimination. Their personal humiliation had been transformed into industry-wide reform through the courage to speak truth to power and the refusal to be silenced by corporate intimidation. As they left the Department of Transportation building, Zuri looked up at her mother with thoughtful eyes. "Mom, do you think Dad would be proud of what we did?" Imani hugged her daughters close, emotion making her voice slightly unsteady. "More proud than I have words to tell you. You didn't just stand up for yourselves, you changed things for families you'll never even meet. That's the most powerful kind of justice there is." The family walked down the steps toward their waiting car, no longer requiring security protection now that those responsible for the threats against them faced criminal prosecution. Above them, the newly approved federal airline passenger rights commission seal was being installed on the building facade, a permanent institutional reminder that when powerful corporations violated human dignity, accountability would follow. The Davis Standard had transformed an industry, but more importantly, it had transformed the conversation about corporate responsibility and passenger rights. What began as two children's humiliation had culminated in protection for millions, a powerful testament to the capacity of truth to overcome even the most formidable corporate barriers to justice. This powerful story illustrates that confronting discrimination often requires extraordinary courage, especially when facing powerful institutions. The Davis family's journey shows that systemic change rarely comes easily. It demands persistence against escalating opposition. When corporations prioritize reputation over accountability, they often make situations worse through cover-ups and retaliation, transforming isolated incidents into evidence of deeper systemic problems. The narrative demonstrates how modern discrimination frequently hides behind algorithms and neutral policies that create plausible deniability while perpetuating bias. It also highlights the crucial role of witnesses and bystanders. When people document injustice and speak up, they create protective visibility that makes intimidation more difficult. Most importantly, the story reveals the special power of children's voices in confronting injustice. The twins' simple truth-telling cut through corporate defenses in ways legal arguments couldn't match. Their perspective reminded everyone of the human impact behind policy discussions. The transformation from individual trauma to systemic change illustrates how personal advocacy can evolve into structural reform when properly channeled. By refusing private settlements that would have silenced them, the family created space for thousands of similar experiences to be acknowledged. Ultimately, the story teaches us that accountability is possible even against seemingly untouchable powers when truth is persistently spoken, evidence is methodically gathered, and public attention is strategically focused on demanding change rather than accepting compensation. Have you ever witnessed discrimination and wondered if speaking up would make any difference? Comment below about a time when you saw injustice in a public space and what happened. Did you remain silent or find the courage to say something? Like this video if you believe companies should be held accountable when they discriminate, and subscribe to hear more powerful stories of everyday people standing up against systemic injustice. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that speaking truth to power can create real change, even when the odds seem overwhelming. Thank you for watching, and remember, your voice matters more than you know. Together, we can transform momentary courage into lasting justice.